The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that lingers thick in the air when something unspoken has taken hold. Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General, stood poised at the defense table, her crisp suit immaculate, her hair pulled back in an elegant twist that conveyed both authority and respect. But all eyes were on the small, shining object around her neck, on a delicate cross necklace, gleaming faintly beneath the harsh glow of fluorescent lights. Judge Mortimer Wallace III, a man known for his strict adherence to decorum and courtroom neutrality, frowned from the bench. The case had barely begun, yet the judge's attention was fixed not on the case file before him, but on Bondi's necklace. Without hesitation, he cleared his throat, leaned forward, and spoke in a measured, chilly tone. "Miss Bondi," he said, "this courtroom is not a stage for religious display. I'm issuing a fine for your failure to remove religious symbols in accordance with this courtroom's guidelines." Gasps rippled through the audience. Bondi's eyes narrowed just slightly, and not with anger, but with something sharper: precision. She did not protest. She did not appeal the fine. Instead, she smiled calmly and took her seat, her hands folded as though she were waiting patiently for the rest of the world to catch up. As the trial commenced, the initial tension seemed to hang in the room like a fog that refused to lift. The case was one of high public interest, an investigation into systemic failures at a pharmaceutical giant accused of concealing fatal side effects. Bondi had been called in not as a politician, but as a legal expert representing a whistleblower who had once been a senior compliance officer. The opposing counsel was armed with a small army of attorneys, each trained, polished, and equipped with reams of evidence aimed at overwhelming the court. But Pam Bondi, undeterred, rose to deliver her opening statement. What followed was not a fiery performance, nor a grandiose display of courtroom theatrics. Instead, it was a meticulous, nearly surgical breakdown of corporate malpractice, statute by statute, clause by clause. She wove together legal precedent, internal memos, and scientific data into a devastatingly coherent narrative. The judge, whose gavel had been quick to punish a Neckless, now found himself slowly leaning in, his expression shifting from aloof irritation to reluctant admiration. The jury, once passive, was visibly engaged. Bondi spoke not to impress but to illuminate, and illuminate she did. By the end of the first week, media coverage had shifted entirely. It was no longer about her cross, it was about her cross-examinations. Throughout the trial, Bondi remained an enigma to many in the room. She was cordial but not overly warm, razor-sharp without being cruel, and always composed, especially when the judge, perhaps out of residual pride, attempted to challenge her on points of courtroom conduct. She responded each time with poise and unimpeachable legal logic, quoting obscure case law and constitutional nuance that left even the seasoned clerks scrambling to keep up. The turning point came when she introduced a surprise witness, an internal IT contractor who had not been included in the original list but whose testimony, Bondi argued, was critical to establishing a deliberate pattern of data deletion by the pharmaceutical company. The opposing counsel protested vehemently. The judge looked skeptical, but Bondi, almost serenely, laid out a trail of legal rationale so unassailable that Judge Wallace had no choice but to allow the testimony. And when the contractor spoke, the courtroom shifted on its axis. He confirmed, in exhaustive technical detail, that the company's leadership had ordered the erasure of incriminating emails that directly referenced the side effects in question and expressed a coordinated effort to suppress the findings. By then, even the judge's previous indignation over the Neckless seemed distant, almost embarrassing in contrast to the brilliance unfolding before him. The fine was never mentioned again. By the end of the trial, something remarkable had happened. Pam Bondi was no longer simply a legal representative or a political figure with a controversial past, as she had become a symbol of the power of law when wielded by someone both brilliant and principled. The jury deliberated for just under a day before returning with a unanimous verdict in favor of Bondi's client. The whistleblower was vindicated. The pharmaceutical giant was held liable for damages and ordered to overhaul its safety reporting infrastructure. But perhaps the most dramatic change occurred not in the verdict, but on the bench. Judge Wallace, who had once fined her for a Neckless, stood as the verdict was read, not with the stiffness of obligation, but with the posture of respect. As Bondi gathered her papers, Preparing to leave, the judge spoke one final time. "Miss Bondi," he said, voice steady, "this court recognizes your mastery of the law. Your adherence to justice has reminded us all of what the courtroom should stand for." The words hung in the air as she nodded politely, the cross still around her neck. In a world that often conflated appearances with substance, Pam Bondi had proven that substance always speaks loudest, especially when it's cloaked in quiet, unshakable conviction.